Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are announcing a technical break. The first technical break in this session. The technical break number 1 is over. Would you like to start? Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and guests, today is the 11th of February 2021, 15:00 Moscow time. Let me start the Dissertation Committee meeting dedicated to the defense of the dissertation of Hayk Sevakovich Militonyan, seeking an academic degree of candidate of political sciences in the Specialisation 2304, Political Problems, International Relations, Global and the Regional Development. And the topic is the structure and the dynamics of the conflicts in the post-Soviet space, case study of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. Let me open the proceedings by the act of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University, Alexander Valentinovich Gnatov, dated the 2nd December 2020. I, Valery Alexeyevich Achkasov, Doctor of Political Sciences, Head of the Department of National Political Process, St. Petersburg University, was appointed Chairman of the Dissertation Committee. Other members of the Dissertation Committee include Igor Fedorovich Kefeli, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Director of the Center of Geopolitical Expertise in Northwestern Institute of Management's Russian Academy of Economy and Public Service, affiliated with the President of the Russian Federation. Online with us is Zainab Zalimkhanova Bakhturis, Doctor of Political Science, Professor of the High School of International Relations of the Institute of Humanities, St. Petersburg Polytechnic University, named after Peter the Great. Can you hear us and see us? Yes, I do. Galina Yasakovna Gribanova, Doctor of Sociological Sciences, Professor of the Department of National Political Process, St. Petersburg State University. Can you hear and see us? Yes, I can hear and see you. Artur Vladimirovich Atanesyan, Doctor of Political Science, Professor, the Head of the Department of Applied Sociology, the Faculty of Sociology. Professor, Head of the Department of Applied Sociology, Faculty of Sociology of Yerevan State University, Armenia. Can you hear and see us? Yes, yes, I can see you very well. With us today, of course, is the candidate Hayk Sevakovich Militonyan. We don't have the for good reasons. Sergei Alexeyevich Lantsov, the head of the academic advisor of the candidate. To improve the quality of communication. Dear colleagues, please switch off your microphones, but don't forget to switch them on once you're given the floor. And also, I would like to inform you that an audio-video recording of this session is being carried out on the website of St. Petersburg University, and simultaneous interpreting is carried out also from Russian into English and from English into Russian also. also accompanied by the broadcast. And then if you'd like to ask a question, you can send it by email during the session, and all questions that relate to the discussion and the dissertation will be read out during the floor discussion, and please, these questions should be signed, and the author of the question should include their affiliation. All questions that have nothing to do with the academic discussion or the dissertation will not be read. In accordance with the procedure of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, that's confirmed by the bylaws of St. Petersburg University. This station committee session is legitimate if not less than 2/3 of the established membership of the dissertation committee, but not fewer than 4 people are present. Our dissertation committee consists of 5 people. All 5 people are present, including 3 members of the dissertation committee in an online mode, in a distant mode. And then with everybody we have full contact, audio and visual contact. Therefore, the quorum is there. I would like to read out the agenda for today's meeting. The duration is not more than 2 hours. And so the items, first one is the short presentation of the chairman about the paperwork that has been submitted by the candidate and their compliance with the regulations, 5 minutes. Short presentation of the candidate of the regarding the key issues that have been touched in the dissertation, 15 minutes. Then questions to the defendant related to the presentation, not more than 2 minutes per question. Then answers of the candidate, not more than 5 minutes for all questions. Presentations of all the members of the station committee of their reviews and short presentations of their positions with questions and suggestions, not more than 10 minutes per speaker. Then number 6, presentation of the by the dissertation committee chairman of his assessment, the dissertation. Then answers of the dissertation of the candidate of not more than 20 minutes for all questions that have been read in the reviews. There will be an open discussion. For the floor will be open to anybody present in the room. You have to enter your name to be able to speak, and in the register book, please include your affiliation. Then there will be questions. There will be, if there are questions that have been received by email, then the chairman will voice them, and the defendant will answer them. 2 minutes per question. Then after the defendant's answers, we have a speech by the head of the dissertation, the dissertation advisor, and more than 3 minutes. I will read it because the dissertation advisor is not here, and then there will be a discussion by the dissertation committee members before an open roll call voting. Then for 5 minutes, then the counting of the votes, the voting, the counting of the votes, and then the decision to award or not to award the sought academic degree will be taken. And the 15th item is the concluding speech by the defendant or the candidate of not more than 2 minutes. Dear colleagues, do you have any objections to this procedure? I understand that there are no objections. Then we'll go on to the first item. First of all, I would like, before we do that, I would like to switch off your mobile telephones, especially this relates to those present here in the room, but the colleagues that are online with us, please don't turn off your telephone, but just switch off the microphone so that we could reach you in case of need. Then well, I would like to go over the documentation that I received from Hayk Sivakovich Militonyan, seeking a degree of kind of political sciences in political problems of international relations, global and regional development. And again, the topic is the structure and dynamics of conflicts in post-Soviet space, case studies of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. This dissertation was accepted for defense on the 12th of November 2020. The academic advisor of the candidate is Sergei Alexeyevich Lantsov, professor of the Department of National Political Process, St. Petersburg University. The number of publications that cover the key issues tackled by the defendant and his dissertation is 3 in the refereed peer-reviewed academic journals from the Ministry of Science, the Russian Federation. 3 publications, Web of Science or Scopus publications, are absent. While the defendant submitted the full package for of the paperwork that have to be submitted for the defense. All the documents comply with the requirements, and they're stored in the file of the candidate, the copies of which is at the possession of the person, of the member of the Office of Dissertation Council Management, Dissertation Committee Management, who is present here. Well, do we need to go over each of the documents? No. I understand that that silence indicates that we shouldn't. Then the 15 minutes for dear members of the Dissertation Committee. The topic of my PhD thesis, kind of science thesis, the structural dynamics of conflicts in the post-Soviet the case studies of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. Relevance when choosing topic proceeded from the fact that one of the most important problems of international relations in the post-Soviet space is the problem of resolving a number of frozen conflicts, including the conflicts in Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. The main danger that potentially comes from such conflicts is that under certain circumstances they can be defrozen and go into a hot phase. This poses a threat to national security at the regional and, in the worst case, to the global level. Even after the text of the dissertation was submitted for defense, such fears was confirmed in reality. As a result of the Second Karabakh War, the situation around Nagorno-Karabakh changed dramatically, And at the end of 2020, after the presidential election in Moldova, prerequisites arose for the aggravation of the situation around Transnistria. In this regard, it can be stated that although the latest events were not reflected in the text of the dissertation, the topic of the dissertation research is not only not outdated, but the degree of its relevance has even grown. The fact is that the conflict situation around Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria have not been finally resolved. Conflict situations, the role of the Russian Federation in their settlement is still great, and in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, Russia's role has grown even more after the entry of the Russian peacekeepers into conflict zones. From the point of view of the national security of the Russian Federation, one cannot ignore that such facts as the strengthening of Turkey's presence in the South Caucasus region, the calls of the new president of Moldova, Sandu, to withdraw Russian peacekeepers from Transnistria. All this gives reason to believe that the study of the reasons of the origin, the study of the structure and the dynamics of Transnistria, of the Transnistria and Nagorno-Karabakh conflicts is still an urgent problem from a theoretical point of view, and the development of approaches to their final settlement is of great practical importance. Well, academic originality within the framework of this dissertation work, an attempt was made to fully study the structure and the dynamics of the conflicts of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, take into account all their multi-layered nature. The similarities and differences in the structure and conflicts of these conflicts were shown. The internal political process in Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Moldova. Internal and external factors that influence the dynamics of conflict are identified. Various sources of data were introduced into scientific circulation, and the previously inaccessible to most research due to their being written in Romanian and Armenian language. Object of research. The object of the research is the conflicts in Nagorno-Karabakh. Transnistria. Subject of research. The subject of research is the structure and dynamics of the development of the Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistrian conflicts. And the purpose is on the comparative analysis, and on the basis of comparative analysis, we're trying to determine the possible ways of their final settlement. Such tasks, our tasks include to identify and study the genesis, causes, and structural elements of Nagorno-Karabakh Transnistria conflict, study the dynamics and course of events and the position of the political elites of the parties involved, and this, as well as their influence on the escalation of the conflict, identification of the main vectors of foreign policy of Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Moldova, and the Pridnestrian Moldavian Republic, and their positions with the framework and within the framework of the negotiating process around this conflict. The study the role of international organization countries involved in the process of settling these conflicts. The scientific research results. The preconditions of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict arose long before the full-scale war in Karabakh, and they were not only based on ethnic and political, but also on economic and psychological reasons and problems. One of the main reasons for the conflict in Transnistria was the Romanian propaganda, the idea of one Romanian people, and the reunification of two states in Greater Romania, economic risks for the Transnistrian Republic policy, ethnic cultural reforms, and of the unions. The conflicts of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, despite some similarities in their dynamics, differ in the nature of the events that led to the escalation. All structural factors in which we also added the problems of national politics and economic issues were used by the new political elites of the countries to mobilize the society and consolidate power through the use of the past, historical and cultural facts and myths. In the case of Karabakh, these are the historical facts, ethnicity, fears, national policies. Then in the Transnistria, it is Romanization and the Greater Romania. provisions for the defense. The Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is ethno-political in nature. Its causes are ethnic distrust between peoples associated with historical reasons, as well as economic inequality. Second, in the Transnistria conflict, the ethnic factor was closely intertwined with the ideological one. The population of Transnistria, which includes a large number of ethnic Moldovans, with Russians and Ukrainians, opposed to the policy of Romanization, the ideas of Greater Romanian, and the opposition of Romanian identity instead of the Moldovan identity. Third, in the explanation of the conflicts of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, a large role was played by the new political elites that arose against the background of the crisis on both central and local Soviet authorities. These new political elites, descended from the intellectual strata of the population, have been able to mobilize societies using historical, cultural, and ethnic facts and myths, as well as fears and risks. Four, considering the position of the parties to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, as well as the attitude of the societies of Georgia, Armenia, and the Nagorno-Karabakh to the conflict, at this stage it is important to transform the mentality of societies and prepare them for compromises and create an atmosphere of trust, after which it will be only possible to move on to the constructive negotiations of conflict resolution. Fifth, in the solution of these conflicts, the role of Russia is very important. An increase in the role of Russia is in the negotiation process and the use of its influence in the region to bring the political and public views of the parties closer together can lead to a resolution of the conflict in the interest not only Moldova and the Transnistrian Republic, but also Russia. Likewise, not only the Russian Federation has the ability to influence all parties to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions? No, I would like to ask a question. Okay. You classify Nagorno-Karabakh as an ethnic problem and Transnistrian as an ideological function. What do you base this conclusion on? Unfortunately, I couldn't hear what you said. You call the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict an ideological conflict? No, the other way around. Sorry, yeah, ethnic, of course, and the Transnistrian conflict ideological. So where do you draw your conclusion from? The Transnistria conflict is more. The ethnic factor there is intertwined with the ideological one, because the composition of Transnistria is not uniform ethnically uniform composition, but there are lots of Russians and Ukrainians, not only Moldovans and Romanians are there. So not only Moldovans, but Moldavians, but also Ukrainians and Russians stood against the imposition of the Romanian language. So the ethnic factor is there, but ideological factor is there. Thank you very much. I would like to comment as well. You follow the Moldavian Democrats who presented this conflict as the conflict between the European technocrats and socialist populists in Moldova. This is a political conflict, in my view, and I would not like to impose it on you either. Galina Isakon, when you finish writing your dissertation, a lot of time has passed, and since that time, you said it, and the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh has changed dramatically. So these latest events, when if you continued working on dissertation, would they have changed your conclusions? If they would, how would they? Yes, the latest events have not been reflected. The role of Russia would have changed because it has increased. Because before that, the Minsk group of the OSCE dealt with the conciliation process, but now the OSCE has left the stage, and Russia has entered the stage. Therefore, the picture has changed, and any other questions, please? Well, regarding your fourth statement, settlement of the conflicts and the change of mentality, yes? So the question is it possible in the short term or the medium term, can you change the attitude between the relations between the Armenians and the Azerbaijanians? Well, theoretically this can change, but practically it's very hard, especially after the events that took place in Nagorno-Karabakh. In the short term is next to impossible. So possibly, well, if we suppose that it's possible, so can you change the mentality in the medium term to create? Well, I said that we should create the atmosphere of trust and prepare both societies for a compromise. So if Turkey doesn't recognize the genocide of 1915 as genocide, what can be done? Well, I don't think that. Maybe I'm talking on my behalf. Well, we don't identify Azerbaijanis with Turks. Well, we can work with their society and with our society to make sure that people understand this is not the same people, same nation. You know that the results of this conflict were received in Armenia with a very negative reaction. So, and there were protests. But on this wave of this protests, counting the number of people who have come out on the street, I think, my opinion, that Pashinyan's government should resign, because his policy, their policy, led to the surrender in the war. But right now, it's if they don't want to do it, it's hardly possible to make them do that, to resign. Any questions? Any more questions? No. Please take your seat. There are no external reviews. I'd like to go to the station committee because all the reviews were published on the website. Maybe you will cover only some key issues, dear colleagues. No objections. Let's start with the reviews then. The first one, Professor Gribanova. I would like to applaud the dissertation, support the dissertation. It's very relevant. What can else be said? And it has a very close focus on the origins of the conflicts in Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, and it's very important. The author has succeeded to stay objective, maximally objective. He tried to, and he managed to eschew categorical statements and assessments about the post-Soviet space. The international aspect of these conflicts is also obvious, and it's revealed. A lot of interesting facts are there. So the regionality, the relevance are definitely there, and the dissertation, of course, was written before the latest events, and I acknowledge that, but I would like to hear some of my questions answers. The first one, well, I asked the first question of him when he studied with me. Why Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria? Why did you choose both? Maybe South Ossetia would be better, and so you had to provide arguments in your dissertation for the choice. The second, as the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is ethnic, not only ethnic but also religious conflict, and that is not tackled in the dissertation. And maybe the dissertation, the author of the dissertation didn't want to violate the law on violating the rights of the believers. Didn't want to address this issue, but he should have done that. And I think this is a very important factor in the conflict. Third, I would like to say that while Nagorno-Karabakh is inspected in depth and very closely, because of course the author has lived through this, and of course this conflict is closer to him personally. But Transnistrian conflict is not very well examined. Armenian positions are discussed in detail, but Transnistrian parties' positions are not so very well studied. Well, the political well, you can say that Dodons and Sander and Plahotniuks positions and their party's positions are not discussed in detail, and it looks like there's no discussion between different political parties, the different political elites of Moldova over the fate of Transnistria. Well, we shouldn't forget that Plokhatnyuk started, was considered the unofficial master of this little country, and so he should have been included into the detestation. As far as the as I said, this discussion is there, and the recent events showed there was a question that had nothing to do with Transnistria, has to do with the status of the Russian language as a language of intercultural, as a lingua franca in Moldova. And so the Social Democrats wanted to make this happen, to attain this status. And Dodon also said that if we reject the Russian language, it would mean that the resolving of the situation in Transnistria would be more difficult. And then also I would like to say that you should have looked into the conflicts between the ruling elites in these republics in Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. We should remember that they are not subjects, but they're subjects, but not only objects of the negotiations. Well, although these are drawbacks in my view, but these drawbacks don't diminish the value of the dissertation, and they can be addressed in the author's future work. Therefore, my conclusion is that the dissertation of Hayk, Militonyan on the topic the structure of the dynamics of the conflicts in the post-Soviet space, the case studies of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, comply with the main requirements that are set out by the Act of St. Petersburg University on the procedure of awarding academic degrees in St. Petersburg University, and therefore Hayk Militonyan deserves the third degree to be awarded to him. Thank you very much, Galina Isakovna. Would you like to answer the questions after all the reviews have been read, or after each review? At the end. Okay, sure. Well, both are possible in my competence. Atanisyan Artur Vladimirovich, your turn now. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to take part in Armenia. The procedure in Armenia and in St. Petersburg University of defending the stations is different, and therefore it's very I read his work very closely, and I I will give an overview, a very short overview of the commendable parts. First of all, the dissertation has a very important point, number 3, that the new elites will have taken a great role, great parts in the escalation of the dissertation, of the conflicts. Of course, I side here with the previous speaker who said that the conflicts between the internal elites are very important. The Nagorno-Karabakh acted as a subject, but the question is why the question of recognizing the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, which has been raised many times, why hasn't been accepted, and especially in April of 44-day war in 2020, the political elites of Armenia and Karabakh said that Nagorno-Karabakh should be recognized as an independent country, and why hasn't it been done, and was it possible to do it, and is there any sense in pursuing this in the future? And the second interesting point in the dissertation regarding the position of the sides of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and also the relationships between Azerbaijan, Armenian and Nagorno-Karabakh society. It's very important to transform the mentality of these societies, and in order to prepare them for a compromise and reconciliation. And the author talks about it's very important, and well, the situation has changed, of course, since this dissertation was submitted. So what has happened? There's a reverse picture. Now, the reconciliation is the methodology of conflict resolution should have been enforced before conflict, and so these. But with this conflict, it is happening post factum. That means that the conflict has taken place, and now political moves towards reconciliation are taking place. So, what do you think? Can you talk earnestly and honestly that such political moves are feasible or effective after the conflict? Well, important thing is that the new sources have been revealed, and especially the sources that are written in Romanian and Armenian, and this is very important. And have you been able to see anything new in these sources, or just translated what we didn't know? And today, the Armenian elite has the Russian vector and is the predominant, and this political vector had been discussed or even changed before. But what do you think today? Does it have any alternative? And can you balance today between the Russian vector and the Western European vector? When number 5, well, critical role here is of the Russian Federation and in Transnistria, and in terms of the Karabakh conflict. So how can you compare the role of Russia in Transnistria and in Nagorno-Karabakh? Well, it wasn't really revealed in the work. The next question is, why hasn't Armenia recognized the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic yet? Well, number 5, I've already asked this question. Then number 5 is you have links to sources, but sometimes you don't include quotation marks, and it's not clear whether you're quoting something or paraphrasing the words of from the source, and this is and therefore it's important. It's not clear whether the values that are expressed are they the author's values or the authors of a source values. For example, I say I could quote as the quotation since the moment when the oil industry started to develop in Baku, Armenians took monopoly positions. Even after that, when the industry, when the Russians and Jews and Georgians entered the industry, Armenians continued to own almost 33% of the oil companies. Azerbaijanis were second with almost 30%. That's the history of Azerbaijan, and it's not clear whether it's original quote or an author's position based on something he has read. Well, nevertheless, my conclusion is that the dissertation of Hayk Militonyan conforms to the requirements of the procedure of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and therefore the candidate deserves being awarded the sought degree of candidate of political sciences in the degree field 230004, political problems of international relations, of the global and regional development. Thank you very much, Professor Danisian. Yes, Now I'd like to Professor Bakhtaridze. First of all, the conflicts is a topic. Conflicts is a topic that are very difficult to tackle, and these conflicts are especially complicated for resolution or even classifying. And I will not read through the commendable parts of my dissertation in full detail, because and this is a relevant issue and this is a relevant topic, and I hope, well, it's very close to me and to my research, to Southern Caucasus conflicts and post-Soviet space in the post-Soviet space in general. And so the candidate is very bold in some of the conclusions and in just tackling this issue in general. And of course there are some drawbacks. I also noticed that there's a disbalance between the focus on the Nagorno-Karabakh and the focus on Transnistria. And of course it's understandable. Well, but also I have to say that there are some nuanced nuances that are good for the that are unavoidable for the dissertation of this kind, but there are some questions that I would like to ask. The formulation of the goal of the research is on the basis of a comparative analysis of the dynamics and the structure of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, how to determine the possible ways of their ultimate settlement. This formulation is quite doubtful and controversial, and how can such a comparative analysis help determine the ways of ultimate settlement of such conflicts? So the goal is controversial. Maybe this goal should be reformulated. And also, well, then also a technical moment when the comparative analysis is put forward, but there's nothing about comparative analysis in the methods of the research. And also another thing is that one of the tasks that he puts before himself is the Azerbaijani, Armenian and Moldovan and Transnistria republics foreign policies within the negotiation process of settling these two conflicts. In the first chapter, the first part, this looks even bigger than the overall goal. Maybe it was not correctly formulated either. Well, anyway, the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh has changed, of course, and so some issues could have been tackled in a different way, of course, but nevertheless, my conclusion is that this is a rounded, complete research work, and therefore it complies with all the requirements of the procedure of St. Petersburg University on the awarding of degrees, academic degrees, and therefore Hayk Militonyan deserves the third degree of the candidate of sciences. Thank you. Thank you, Zainab Zelimkhanovna. Next is Professor Keferi. What we heard today, I also have a very positive attitude to this work. There's a good politological analysis of the risks and dangers and challenges that have to do with these unresolved conflicts in the post-Soviet space. And the main goal of the dissertation is to reveal the reasons why the negotiation processes in Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria are at a deadlock. And this question has been asked of the candidate. How would he have approached differently the same issues after this conflict and Nagorno-Karabakh? And I will not review all the achievements of the author in each chapter, but I will just say that the third chapter, the Dissertation, has a little bit of has an overview of the comparative analysis, comparative study of these two conflicts. So the analysis of the internal political process in the Republic of Moldova and its influence on the conflict in Transnistria, there is very valuable. Although the author didn't forecast the outcomes of the presidential elections in Moldova, he lucidly outlined what such outcomes would have brought about in the conflict. And so my questions are: what are the motives of the external parties? Well, I think that the background of the latest event, the author has not paid enough attention to the role of Turkey in Nagorno-Karabakh and the role of Romania in the Transnistria conflict as external geopolitical actors. And the third, the author shows his interest in the research matter. It's the author published on the topic, and but I'd like to say that some comments, critical comments, could be in order as well. The life goes on, it changes, and the dissertation was submitted for defense, and then the latest events happened after the, and maybe the dissertation could have been viewed differently before that, but nevertheless, my suggestion to the author in the future to continue studying this topic. You should pay more attention to the role of the external actors, as I said, the role of Turkey, and therefore, because of Turkey, this frozen conflict became a hot conflict, military conflict. Well, the degree field here is the global and regional political processes, and therefore these regional conflicts are under the influence of the global conflicts, of course. On page 120, the author says, just a second, as a guarantor of the security of Transnistria and the negotiator in the Nagorno-Karabakh, Russia can play the key role. Well, it's taking place as a Minsk group member. Well, and you can see that the European Union and the USA are not present. Well, it's good. The strategy of political policy of the USA states that they should they want to focus on their own interests rather than on the interests of the parties involved in the conflict. And the second issue that I would like to raise is that the third chapter of the dissertation, with all its interesting material, is a bit ad hoc, and the logic is not quite robust there. For example, on page 72, the Russian version, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, about the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, it says the successful completion of the mediating mission of Iran would not be in the interests of regional and out of regional actors. Neither Russia nor the United States would like to see the political role of Iran in the region being elevated, and then the author says that Pentagon only puts pressure on the official Yerevan and Baku so that they could refuse the services of Iran. For example, this was in the statement of the Congress of the Special Advisor to the the Secretary of State, Strobe Talbot, in March 1992. But Russia, but nothing is mentioned about the position of Russia vis-à-vis Iran, and we don't have any evidence for the previous statement that no Russia isn't interested. Well, so there are methods of manipulation and the different conflict resolution methods. Nevertheless, the refereed work definitely makes a contribution, an important contribution to the discipline, to the study of the nature of political and ethno-political conflicts in the post-Soviet space, and the determining of recommendations in the conflict resolution domain. Now, the dissertation of Hayk, Militonyan on the topic the structure and the dynamics of the conflicts in the post-Soviet space, the case studies of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, complies with the key requirements of the Act of 109/2016 on the procedure of awarding academic degrees in St. Petersburg University. And Hayk now deserves the degree. And what's left is my own statement, my own review. The relevance and the importance of the work is obvious. A lot has been, despite the fact that a lot of the literature has been written on the topic, and a lot of dissertation have been defended. Nevertheless, the topic is inexhaustible, and these conflicts get defrozen all the time, and therefore in both military and geopolitical, but also in scientific terms, these conflicts present a lot of interest, and the goals and of the research are clear. The logic is there, the sources are reviewed, and there are recommendations on conflict, on the resolving of these conflicts, and the dynamics of the conflicts are described in a scientific way, and the recommendations, the proposals of the parties are reviewed in great detail, and well, the conclusions of the author reflect some serious problems that have to do with the conflict resolution, both in Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. A lot of work has been done and been put in writing the dissertation, and the author manifests the author's high qualification. Of course, the dissertation is not free from some drawbacks. The first one, the author of the dissertation uses textbooks and teaching manuals too often, well, as a source well, to use a textbook for as a source of for the dissertation research, it's not really good, because textbooks compile facts and make conclusions rather than present original research. And for example, you cite Kosov and Toropygin, published in 2012. Well, it's not really high research level. Well, then also, of course, I can recognize the long list of literature, but you omitted using the research the studies by Avsentieva, Tishkova, Semenenko, Pine, and Schnirelman, and others who are recognized experts in the ethno-political conflicts. So, for example, all these people, the colleagues, well, and this list is not exhausted. I just mentioned the most the ones that spring to mind. Then you also cite the Russian researcher Rostoltseva, who says that the main problems of the current literature in ethno-conflictology lies in the inadequate depth of theoretical foundations and the lack of interdisciplinary research, or a lack of any theoretical approaches. But I think the problem here is, unfortunately, you don't use the theoretical works that do exist. For example, at least that have been translated into Russian. For example, the classical work on ethnic conflicts by Gorovets, the ethnic groups in a conflict, theories, examples, and politics, and then Schley, the conflict management theory and practice, or Europeanization and conflict resolution, specific studies of the European periphery. Well, and then our Finnish colleague Vaihinen, ethnic conflicts, their biological roots in the ethnic favoritism, and also Mann, the dark side of democracy, an explanation of ethnic cleansing. And so you haven't mentioned these books, and these are the basic studies, and then they've and especially this one, the ethno-political conflict, ways of transformation, as a companion of Berghoff Center, and others. Well, of course, and unfortunately, also, I would say that you don't have many sources in English, many recent sources in English on the topic. Well, number 4, the academic or the scientific originality of the research is not formulated well enough. Maybe if you did that, then your conclusions would be more fundamental. And and then, for example, mentality, changing the mentality. It's, from childhood in Armenia and Azerbaijan, children are taught about the distrust and hate, basically, of the other side, the other nation. The fifth one, there's some stylistic drawbacks. Some references are not written out in the right way, don't conform to the requirements. But on the whole, the author of the dissertation has done a lot of work and has prepared a good research paper, and therefore the dissertation of Hayk, Sivakovich, Militonyan, The Structure and Dynamics of Conflicts on the Post-Soviet Space, the case studies Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria, conforms to the requirements of the procedure of awarding academic degrees in St. Petersburg University, and therefore Militonyan deserves the right to be awarded the third degree. Yes, please. Now you have the time to answer the questions that you heard from the from the members of the academic committee. The first one is from Galina Isakovna. Why did I choose these two conflicts? Well, these are the most protracted. The conflicts. These conflicts between Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria are the longest. Despite their differences, they have certain similarities. Both conflicts began against the backdrop of the collapse of the Soviet Union. Both have not yet been fully resolved, and there is possibility of a theoretical aggravation of the Transnistria conflict. And the Second Karabakh War is an actual example. At the same time, the conflicts of Abkhazia and South Ossetia are on a highly different plane. Both of these countries are partially recognized states, and behind both the states is Russia, which supports both the states. The conflict in Donbass is the result of internal political process in Ukraine in the post-Soviet period, and this differs from the conflicts of Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria. As far as the definition of a Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, there's ethnopolitical, and that it doesn't seem accurate because there's no mention of religious confrontation. If we talk about the religious confrontation of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, it should be noted that the religion, being an integral part of the identity of both Armenians and the Azerbaijanis, was something already taken for granted. So too much attention was not focused on this. At the same time, it should be noted that although the religious aspect of the conflict is being promoted in the two countries, it is important to note that not only a very small part of the society of both Armenia and Azerbaijan is involved in this. At the same time, it should be noted the official statements of Patriarch Kirill, Catholicos of Armenian Garagin, and chairman of the Caucasus of Muslim Office, Allah Shukur, so that during the Second Karabakh War no religious elements and appeals are used. But it is still important to note that during the Second Karabakh only religious confrontation was used as a tool to attract Muslim militants. The third one, the position of various political forces in Armenia and the problem of Nagorno-Karabakh is disclosed differently. It's not disclosed sufficient. Is disclosed sufficiently fully, and then the analysis of the views of the solution of the suffers. Over the past several years and the internal policy of the Republic of Moldova, issues related to the problem of Transnistria have been relegated to the background. Discussions were primarily on the internal problems of Moldova itself. The main thing was the confrontation of the political force behind Dodon, Plahotniuc and Sandu. Only after the election to the post of President of Moldova, who adheres to the pro-Romanian orientation, Sandu, who declared the need to withdraw the Russian peacekeepers, did the Transnistria problem come to the fore. But this happened when the dissertation was presented for defense. The third one is the focus on the international aspects of the conflicts. Thanks to the review for the comment, but we must also add that the changes were taking place in the political elites of Transnistria and Nagorno-Karabakh. It was difficult to fully define their positions, since in the political elites, especially in Nagorno-Karabakh, already in 2020 there was a big change due to the presidential elections, and studying these new elites was difficult due to the lack of sources. Artur Vladimirovich noticed that various sources and data have been introduced in the scientific circulation, but and due to my knowledge of Armenian, is there a novelty in these sources, or just all sources to one degree or another were published before? This means that the graduate student had previously studied, as a graduate student, that I previously studied in Armenia and then in Romania, which made it possible for me to study the sources and data in both Armenian and Romanian languages. To what extent was the policy of complementarianism and the activities of Armenian authorities justified in the work of the settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict? In my opinion, the policy of complementarism within the framework of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in Armenia's foreign policy did not justify itself, given the low interest in the issue on the part of the EU and the US, which were active in resolving the conflict only within the framework of the OSCE Minsk group. On the other hand, the region, which is traditionally considered the sphere influence of Russia, is in the geopolitical interests of Russia, which explains the activity of Russia in the issue of resolving the conflict. As far as the Armenia in the Transnistria conflict, but the Moldova is actually the eastern border of the EU after Romania joined the EU in 2020, and the Transnistrian cluster poses risk to the stability, and therefore I don't understand why the EU is not so much interested in this. And also the position of the West within the framework of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is not clear. For example, during the 2020 war, NATO could not have a clear position, given that Turkey and France had completely opposite positions, and both of these countries are part of NATO. The position of the West is qualitatively different in the Transnistrian conflict, of course. The critical importance, why has Nagorno-Karabakh not recognized the independence of If we talk about the events up to 2016, I think that Armenia did not recognize the independence of in order not to torpedo the negotiation process. At the same time, I used the issue of recognition of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic as a lever for pressure. Well, and speaking about the actions of the Armenian authorities in 2020 and their non-recognition of the independence of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, then in my opinion the recognition of the independence of Nagorno-Karabakh required certain conditions. Well, your answers should be shorter. Although Armenia didn't have the potential and that Armenia doesn't have, probably. Well, the best moment was after the first Karabakh war, when Armenia could afford, as a winner, to recognize the independence. As far as, but but we can still compare these conflicts, both unrecognized and both have peacekeepers, and their presence and well, the Russian peacekeepers are in the conflict zone. As far as the formulation of the goal, was to present the main vectors in the negotiation process, and as far as the comparative analysis not being be presented as in the goal. Thank you for your comment. I accept that. As far as the role of Turkey, that is not covered in the dissertation. Of course, in the second talk, in the second war, Turkey was not only was only a rhetorical party, and therefore we didn't pay so much attention to their role. As far as the ad hoc nature of the third chapter, the Iran mission was a failure, and because of the passive position of Russia, and therefore we just didn't address it. As far as the Armenian and Romanian languages not being used, well, I try to, well, they are subjective, you see, and I try to use more objective sources. Valery Alexeyevich, thank you for your questions. As far as the textbooks, the use of textbooks, although the use of the textbook in the dissertation is not correct, so the name textbook was used in the work, given that one of the authors personally was looking for ways to resolve these conflicts, and the book to some extent reflected the realities of the issue. Please speak. As far as the other works, I accept all your comments, and I will use them in my future work. So have you finished? Yes. Dear colleagues, are you satisfied with the replies, the responses of Hayk Sivakovich? No. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Take a seat. Are there any people in the audience who would like to speak up and ask a question? No takers. Therefore, no questions have been received online either. Therefore, this is the time for the academic advisor to make Well, I would like to remind you that that Sergei Alexeyevich could not be here, and therefore the conflicts in Nagorno-Karabakh and Transnistria have been the longest as frozen conflicts, and the risk is for that it would jeopardize the post-Soviet space. The review was written in September 2020, and therefore it has no reference to the recent events in Nagorno-Karabakh. And there's a lot of literature. I continue the review. There's a lot of literature that tackles this issue and other issues. This Militonyan's research dissertation is of value. The faculty, the candidate studied in Armenia and Romania. He fluently reads and speaks Armenian, not only Russian but Armenian and Romanian. And Militonyan faced a number of problems from issues. One of them is that has to do with the settlement of of these conflicts, and the author has succeeded in tackling all of these difficult challenges. And as a researcher, Militonyan has proved himself to be an independent and initiative-taking young scholar, and the research was published in several publications in peer-reviewed journals recommended by the Ministry of Science of the Russian Federation, and he also spoke at different conferences, and so the results can be used for further research of the political and processes that are taking place in the countries of the former Soviet Union. And this research work can be presented for defense as a dissertation, and this dissertation is fully recognizes the procedures of awarding the academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. Since this dissertation committee session has an online component, I would like to ask a question. Does anybody in this dissertation committee have any objections or questions in terms of the procedure, in terms of technology? Do you have any questions or objections? No. The candidate has no questions, no objections. The members of the dissertation committee have no questions or objections. Now, before we start voting, open roll call, will we need time to deliberate in secret before we vote? I suggest that we don't take a technical break. So if we don't need a break, then we proceed to the voting. So this is an open roll call vote, and therefore you should state your opinion. Do you vote for awarding the degree or against awarding the degree? So, by the order of your reviews, Galina Isakovna, I vote for the awarding of the degree. Artur Vladimirovich Antonisyan, I vote for the awarding of the degree. Zinab Zelimkhanovna, I vote for the degree. Igor Fedorich, I vote for awarding the degree. And Chairman, I also vote for the awarding of the degree as a chairman of the Dissertation Committee. So I put to the vote, and yes, the voting took place. So everybody voted for it. Sorry, I mixed up the order of things, and my task is now to count the votes for awarding the third degree. 5 votes, no nays and no abstentions, and therefore I would like to voice the resolution on awarding Hayk Sivakovich Militonyan an academic degree of Chemical Political Sciences in the degree field Political Problems of International Relations of the Global and Regional Development has been taken. The decision has been taken. Therefore, and since our session has some members of the Dissertation Committee online with us, then do you have any questions or objections? Has everything been good? All right. I would like to give the floor for a final statement to the defendant. I would like to thank members of the Dissertation Committee for their reviews and my academic advisor. Unfortunately, he was not present here for the support. Thank you very much. Thank you. On behalf of the Dissertation Committee, I congratulate you on being awarded the third degree of Candidate of Political Sciences. Thank you. Please give the candidate a round of applause. The session is now officially closed. Please switch off the broadcast. Thank you.